Take the guest room. My husband told me when his pregnant sister and her husband appeared unannounced. Or move out. His sister smiled faintly and added, "It would be great if you're gone by the weekend." So I left. But only a few days later, that confident grin disappeared, replaced with panic and disbelief. "She's lying, Mom. Please tell me she's lying. Pack your things and move into the guest room by tonight, or just leave. It's your choice." Ethan's tone was casual as he spread cream cheese over his morning bagel, as if he were talking about the weather instead of ending our 7-year marriage. Behind him, his sister Sabrina stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her rounded belly while her gaze traveled across my kitchen, already measuring the granite countertops with possessive eyes. "Actually," she said, smiling with the confidence of a shark, "it would be great if you're gone by the weekend. We need to start the nursery." The pharmaceutical contract I had been reviewing slipped from my hands, $22 million in consulting fees fluttering to the marble floor. I stood frozen in my home office, reading glasses still on, trying to make sense of something that shouldn't have been real. This penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, represented 15 years of 16-hour days, missed birthdays, and weekends surrendered to work. Every square foot had been earned through my effort, my intellect, and my ability to solve problems that kept corporate executives awake at night. "Excuse me," I said at last. The steadiness of my voice surprised me, because inside I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything vital and left behind only an echo. "Before we go further, if you've ever been underestimated or dismissed by family who believed they knew what was best for you, please consider subscribing. Stories like this one matter. They remind us that standing up for ourselves is never wrong." Ethan didn't even glance at me. "Sabrina and Marco need stability during the pregnancy," he said. "The master bedroom has the space they need, and the attached bathroom is important for her morning sickness." His voice carried the careful rhythm of someone who had practiced this speech, probably while I was still at the board meeting that ran until midnight. At 42, I had built what women of my mother's generation could only dream of. Winslow Consulting Group employed 12 people who depended on my leadership and strategy. Only that morning, I had called my mother in Ohio to tell her about securing the new pharmaceutical contract. Her voice had been full of pride as she relayed the news to her neighbor, Margaret. I could hear it in the background. My Clara runs her own company, 12 employees. Margaret, who still believed a woman's place was supporting her husband's career, had gone silent. Now I stood in the kitchen I had personally renovated, Norwegian marble, German appliances, watching the man I had supported through his architectural exams, whose student loans I had paid off, and whose professional connections had come through my own business network, calmly evict me from the life I had built. "Ethan," I said, placing my Hermes porcelain coffee cup carefully on the counter so it made a precise click. "This is my home. I own this penthouse." He finally met my eyes, his expression cool and detached. "We're married," he replied. "That makes it our home. And family comes first." Sabrina stepped further into the kitchen, letting her fingers trace along my custom cabinetry. "These will be perfect for baby food storage," she murmured, already claiming the space. Her husband Marco entered behind her, 2 suitcases in hand, his man bun catching the light. He gave me a polite nod, the kind you'd give a hotel clerk, not the homeowner. "I have the Henderson presentation at 3, I said, my voice sounding detached from my body. "The entire board will be there. We're restructuring their Asian supply chain." "Then you'd better get packing," Sabrina replied cheerfully, making slow circles on her belly with her hand. "We need to set up before my doctor's appointment at 2. The absurdity of it hit me all at once. That very morning, I had woken as Clara Winslow, co-owner of a $5 million penthouse, featured in Forbes for transforming corporate consulting. Now, I was being told to pack my belongings like a college student being expelled from her dorm. Ethan continued preparing his breakfast, adding tomato slices with surgical focus. This was the same man who had stood beside me at the altar, who toasted me with champagne when I signed my first $1 million client, who had made love to me in this very kitchen only a week ago. "Wheeler and Associates passed you over for partner again, didn't they?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His jaw tightened. That has nothing to do with this. But of course it did. For 3 years, Ethan had watched younger architects climb past him, attended company parties where people asked about my business first and his work second, and sat through dinners where colleagues' wives gushed about my Forbes article while he sipped his whiskey in silence. Mrs. Winslow, Sabrina said crisply, she'd begun calling me that lately, even though we were family. The movers will need access to the master closet. Could you leave your keys? Movers. They had already scheduled movers before even telling me. I looked down at the contract pages scattered across the marble floor, each one symbolizing stability for my employees, growth for my firm, and validation for every risk I had taken. My phone vibrated with a text from my assistant. Goldman team confirmed for 3 p.m. They're excited about the partnership proposal. I have meetings, I said, uncertain whether I was speaking to them or to myself. I have obligations. Cancel them, Ethan replied, biting into his perfectly assembled bagel. Or work from a hotel. You love hotels, don't you? All those business trips. The accusation hung between us, heavy and unspoken. All those late nights building my company instead of playing the devoted wife. All those conferences and strategy sessions that had paid for this penthouse, his Audi, and the lifestyle he now considered normal. Marco began pacing through the living room, phone in hand, using a measuring app to calculate dimensions, probably deciding where their furniture would go. My furniture. My carefully curated pieces collected from galleries and estate sales. Each page scattered on the floor felt like a small victory once earned, tangible proof of my work and success. The guest room, Ethan began, is a closet with a Murphy bed. I finished for him. It's temporary, he said, though his eyes betrayed the truth. Just until they get settled. Sabrina let out a light, tinkling laugh that made my skin crawl. Oh, Ethan, stop pretending. We all know this is better for everyone. Clara's always working anyway. She barely uses this place. Barely uses this place. The same home where I had installed a library of first editions, where I had built a sanctuary from the ruthless corporate world, a space I believed was shared with someone who valued me for more than my income or ambition. My phone rang. Nathaniel Carrington's name appeared on the screen, the CEO from Singapore who had been pursuing me for 6 months with an offer that would triple my current earnings. I had turned him down 3 separate times because Ethan insisted we stay in New York. He had promised we were partners. He had sworn that our life here meant everything to him. I let the call go to voicemail. Yet, something deep inside shifted, like tectonic plates adjusting before an earthquake. The silence that followed Nathaniel Carrington's missed call spread through the kitchen like spilled wine, seeping into everything. I slipped my phone into my pocket, the weight of that lost opportunity pressing against my side. Sabrina stood near the window now, her figure outlined by the morning light, silently calculating square footage as if appraising property. Marco, come see this view, she called to her husband, still dragging suitcases across my foyer. The baby's playpen could go right here where the sun hits. Her attention then shifted to my Italian coffee machine, the one I had bought after closing my first major deal. She brushed her fingers along its chrome surface with the proprietary touch of someone already claiming ownership. That machine had powered countless early mornings, endless nights of planning, and became my ritual of order amid chaos. Now it was just another entry in her mental inventory. Marco finally stepped fully into view, wearing one of those linen shirts that screamed creative and free-spirited, but really just meant unemployed by choice. His hair was pulled back into that same ridiculous bun, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never built anything of his own. This space has incredible potential, he announced, as if his opinion carried weight. Once we optimize the feng shui and create proper energy flow, it'll be perfect for raising a conscious child. A conscious child. In my penthouse, a home purchased with the money I earned solving multi-million-dollar problems for Fortune 500 companies, while Marco likely spent his afternoons at drum circles, calling it networking. The movers will be here at noon, Sabrina said, not to me but to Ethan, as though I had already ceased to exist. They'll start setting up the nursery furniture in the master bedroom. Nursery furniture? My voice cracked slightly. You've already bought nursery furniture? She turned to me with that calm, patronizing look people reserve for slow learners. We've been planning this for months, Clara. Ethan didn't tell you. Months. The word landed like a blow. I gripped the counter to steady myself. My eyes found Ethan, silently begging for denial, for even a flicker of shame or surprise, anything that would tell me this wasn't what it seemed. But he was focused on the sink, scrubbing at coffee grounds with the intensity of a surgeon. How many months? I asked, though my voice trembled. Since we found out about the pregnancy, Marco answered helpfully, apparently oblivious to the tension thickening the air. 7 months ago. Sabrina wanted everything perfect before announcing the move. 7 months. 7 months of planning behind my back. 7 months of my husband conspiring with his sister while sleeping beside me. 7 months of deception wrapped in ordinary mornings, quiet dinners, and meaningless I love yous. Show me the guest room, I said, though the words didn't sound like my own. All 3 of them smiled, genuinely smiled, as if I had finally become reasonable. Sabrina led the way like a realtor showing off a property, her designer flats clicking against my hardwood floors. Ethan followed behind, still refusing to meet my eyes, while Marco lingered at the back, typing on his phone with the false urgency of a man with purpose. The walk down my hallway felt like a funeral procession. We passed my office, where the pharmaceutical contract still lay scattered. We passed the library I had transformed from a spare bedroom, lined with first editions and signed copies from authors I had met. We passed the bathroom I had renovated with a Japanese soaking tub, my one indulgence after a punishing year of growth. Here we are, Sabrina said brightly, pushing open the door to what had once been a storage room. The space measured perhaps 8 by 10 feet, dominated by a neglected Murphy bed that hadn't been unfolded in years. A single window faced the building's HVAC system, a dull view of machinery and pipes. Beige carpet, likely original from the 1980s, covered the floor. The smell hit instantly: dust, old paint, and something else. Something close to defeat. It's perfect for your needs, Sabrina said, her voice full of confidence she hadn't earned. Minimal distractions, she claimed, ideal for all that work I did. Marco peeked in, gave a satisfied nod, and said, very zen. You could really develop a meditation practice in here. A meditation practice in a room that smelled of forgotten ambitions and looked like a prison cell pretending to be peaceful. The bathroom is down the hall, Ethan finally said, his tone deliberately neutral. You'll share it with guests when we have them. When we have them. He was already speaking as if I no longer existed in the concept of home. Where will I put my clothes? I asked, glancing around the room that didn't even have a closet. There's a wardrobe in the basement storage, Sabrina offered quickly. We can have it brought up. It's very vintage, very authentic. I stood in the doorway, my body blocking their path, and felt something inside me shift. It wasn't a break, breaking implied fragility. It was more like a rope snapping clean, a tether finally cut. The part of me that excused Ethan's ego, that bent to make his family comfortable, that negotiated for respect, it simply ceased to exist. I need to make some calls, I said quietly, stepping aside. Of course, Sabrina chirped as she glided past. Take all the time you need, within reason. The movers will need access soon. Ethan lingered for a heartbeat, perhaps noticing something different in me, the absence of the accommodating wife. But when our eyes met, he looked away first and followed his sister down the hall. I remained in that small, suffocating room, listening to their voices echo from the master suite. Sabrina was already planning, the crib near the window, baby-proofing the balcony, turning the walk-in closet into storage for baby supplies. My walk-in closet. The one with rows of color-coordinated clothing, custom shelving for shoes, and a mirror that cost more than most people's rent. My phone vibrated. An email from my assistant reminding me of the afternoon presentation. Another from Goldman Sachs confirming our 3 o'clock meeting. A text from my mother asking how my morning was going. The normal world continued spinning as mine tilted off its axis. I turned toward the single window, gazing out at the HVAC machinery framed in dull gray metal, and made a decision. Not the emotional kind they expected, no tears, no begging, no theatrical exit. This would be strategic. Cold. Methodical. The same precision I used in corporate restructuring, only this time, the project was my life. Furniture scraped in the master bedroom. My furniture. My life being rearranged for people who viewed me as an obstacle. I took out my phone and scrolled to Nathaniel Carrington. My thumb hovered over the call icon as Sabrina's laugh floated down the hall, bright, self-satisfied, victorious. The laugh of someone who believed she'd already won. Instead of calling, I set the phone down. A new plan was forming. If they wanted to play games with my future, I needed to learn their rules first. The penthouse was silent at 6 in the morning. Sabrina and Marco wouldn't emerge before 10. People without real jobs rarely did. Ethan had already left, pressing a perfunctory kiss to my cheek on his way out, like ticking off a chore. Barefoot, I walked through rooms that suddenly felt foreign, the spaces I had designed now belonging to strangers. I reached my office, where the shared desktop computer sat waiting. Ethan had never been particularly tech-savvy. His passwords were predictable, variations of his birthday or our anniversary, dates that had clearly lost meaning to him long ago. I typed them in. The account opened. A folder labeled Family Planning caught my eye. My stomach tightened. The title sounded innocent, but instinct told me otherwise. The first message was dated 3 months earlier. "Jules, she won't fight us if we handle it right," Sabrina had written. "You know how Clara is, she hates scenes. Tell her it's temporary, and she'll accept it." Ethan's reply made my hands tremble. "You're right. She has plenty of money anyway. The business is thriving. She won't even notice the financial adjustment. And she avoids confrontation. We can make this work." Financial adjustment. As if I were just another entry in his budget. I scrolled through weeks of planning. Every email another wound. They had discussed timing, waiting until after I finalized my biggest contract, knowing I'd be too busy to fight back. They had researched legal loopholes. Sabrina even cited tenant laws, noting that as Ethan's wife, I had limited rights if he claimed to be helping his pregnant sister. Then one email stopped me cold. "I've been thinking about the trust situation," Ethan had written. "Clara must have family money she hasn't mentioned. No one builds a business that fast without seed capital. Her father died years ago. There must have been life insurance. I'll look into it." The phone rang, piercing the silence. My mother's photo lit up the screen, the one from last Christmas, her smiling in the cashmere sweater I'd sent. "Morning, Mom," I answered, steadying my voice. "Clara, honey," she began, worry thick in her tone. "Something strange happened yesterday. Ethan called me. He was asking about your father's life insurance policy, wanted to know if there were any investments we hadn't told him about." The room seemed to tilt around me. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "The truth," Mom said. "That your father's insurance barely covered his hospital bills and the funeral. You know that, sweetheart. We used every penny for his treatment." She paused, and I could picture her in her small Ohio kitchen, both hands wrapped around her coffee mug. Why would Ethan ask about that after 8 years? "He's just confused about some financial planning," I lied quickly. "Don't worry about it, Clara." Her tone sharpened, that mother's intuition surfacing. "What's really going on? You sound different." I couldn't tell her that her son-in-law was digging through our family's grief for money that didn't exist, that he was so sure I had hidden wealth he'd disturb my widowed mother to find it. "Everything's fine, Mom. I've got an early meeting," I said, and hung up before my voice could betray me. When I turned back to the emails, my vision blurred, not from tears, not yet, but from rage. Pure, crystalline rage that burned away any trace of disbelief. They hadn't only plotted to steal my home, they'd tried to catalog my entire life, searching for assets to claim. A new message appeared as I watched Sabrina to Ethan. "Movers are confirmed for noon. Once her things are in the guest room, phase 2 begins. Dad's lawyer says if she abandons the marital home, it strengthens Jay's position in asset division." Asset division. They were already preparing for a divorce I hadn't even imagined, one that would frame me as the deserter, the woman who left voluntarily. I screenshot everything, forwarding the evidence to my personal email with the same precision I used in corporate audits. Then I wiped the browser history clean. Let them think their secret was safe. Back in the guest room, I opened my filing cabinet, searching for contracts, and came across something else instead, the Carrington International folder. Nathaniel Carrington had pursued me for months, offering a position that would triple my income, Chief Strategy Officer for the Asian Division, based in Singapore. The package included an apartment overlooking Marina Bay and a private driver. I had declined 6 months ago right here, in this room when it was still a storage space, while Ethan stood behind me, his hands on my shoulders, whispering, "Our life is here, Clara. Our future is here. Our future." He'd already been planning to move his sister in when he said those words. The doorbell rang, snapping me from my thoughts. Tessa stood there, my closest friend since college, dressed in tennis whites, fury written across her face. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the penthouse. She stopped short, taking in the scene. Marco's meditation mat sprawled across the living room, Sabrina's pregnancy books stacked on my coffee table. "My God," she whispered. "It's true." "What's true?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. Tessa belonged to the quiet network of Manhattan's elite, the charity boards, the country club, the endless flow of whispered information. "I was at the club yesterday," she said. Sabrina was holding court at the juice bar, telling anyone who'd listen how she'd finally put that career woman in her place. Tessa's fingers clenched around her tennis racket. She said Ethan deserved better than a wife who thought she was so important. Said you were jealous of her pregnancy and had to be removed, like a stain. She took a breath. "There's more. She's been planning this since she got pregnant, 7 months. She told her book club that you'd probably claim mental instability from work stress, so they had to act before you had a breakdown that might complicate things." I sank onto the Murphy bed. It groaned under my weight. They had pathologized my ambition, weaponized my work ethic, and turned my achievements into proof of madness. The accuracy of their manipulation was almost admirable. "What are you going to do?" Tessa asked, sitting beside me. I looked at the Carrington folder, then at my phone, where the screenshots waited like loaded ammunition. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want," I said quietly, "and then I'm going to disappear, with everything they never knew they needed." Tessa gripped my hand. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. If you need anything, money, a place to stay, an alibi, just call." After she left, I sat in that cramped space for exactly 5 minutes, giving myself that moment of stillness before turning into someone they wouldn't recognize, a strategist preparing for a hostile takeover. That afternoon, while Sabrina stretched through prenatal yoga in my living room and Marco led a so-called creative visioning session on my balcony, I slipped out with my laptop bag, claiming an emergency client meeting. The lie came easily. I'd been trained by experts. My first stop was a coffee shop 20 blocks away, a place no one from Ethan's circle would ever visit. I opened my laptop and began assembling what I would later call the war documents. Receipts, invoices, bank statements, 7 years' worth of proof streamed from my cloud storage. The kitchen renovation alone had cost $32,000, Italian marble, German appliances, custom cabinetry that Sabrina was now stuffing with her organic supplements. Every item favored me. The custom furniture from the Chelsea showroom, mine. The smart home system Ethan never learned to use, installed with my Morrison account bonus. Even the artwork on the walls, pieces from now famous artists, all purchased with my company card. My phone buzzed. It was Lauren, Nathaniel Carrington's assistant, calm and efficient. "Ms. Winslow," she said, "Mr. Carrington asked me to confirm your acceptance of the position. The contract's ready for signature and we can arrange for relocation immediately." "How soon is immediately?" I asked, watching a couple at the next table share dessert, unaware that lives could implode without warning. "We could have you in Singapore within 2 weeks," she replied. "The apartment's vacant and furnished. Your signing bonus of $200,000 will be deposited upon execution." $200,000, enough to start over without pleading, without compromise, without ever looking back. "Send the contract," I said. "I'll sign it today." When the call ended, I sat motionless in my car, staring at the concrete wall of the parking garage. The building where Ethan and I had lived for 5 years suddenly felt like a tomb, one I'd been buried alive inside. But now, for the first time, I could sense daylight filtering through the cracks. I could feel the dirt shifting above me as I clawed my way out. The next morning, Tuesday, I met with Victoria Lau, not my friend Victoria, but my attorney, the same woman who had helped me structure my company to withstand exactly this kind of betrayal. Her office smelled faintly of leather and old money, the kind of place where life-altering decisions were discussed in calm, deliberate tones. The penthouse lease is in your name only, she confirmed after reviewing my documents. Ethan insisted on that, didn't he? To protect his assets from any potential business liability. She smiled, sharp and knowing. Ironic how that works out. You can terminate the lease with 60 days' notice or transfer it to him if he qualifies financially, which, based on his income, he doesn't. Wednesday's mission was financial. I arrived at Chase Bank precisely at 9 o'clock, where my personal banker, Gregory, had managed my accounts for 6 years. The joint account contained exactly $3,043, grocery and utility money. The real assets were locked safely in my business accounts, untouchable by Ethan. I need to close the joint account, I said, and remove Ethan as beneficiary from everything else. Gregory didn't flinch. In his line of work, marital implosions were routine. Will you be needing new cards? He asked, fingers already moving over his keyboard. Yes. New numbers, new passwords, new everything. Within minutes, the credit cards Ethan used for his lavish client lunches, golf membership, and monthly wine subscription were canceled. By the time he tried to use them, I would be gone, leaving him to explain to some waiter why his payment had been declined. Thursday was for logistics. I met the movers at a storage facility in Queens, where they cataloged each item I planned to take. Every piece was documented, photographed, labeled, and matched to receipts. The coordinator, a former military logistics officer named Nathaniel, appreciated my precision. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock sharp, he confirmed. 3 trucks, 20 men. We'll have you cleared out in 4 hours. That evening, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. I'm leaving Ethan, I said. Finally, she exhaled a long, trembling release that carried years of restrained opinion. That man never deserved you. Your father never liked him, said he had weak handshake energy. Mom, I said softly, I'm moving to Singapore. Silence stretched between Ohio and New York. Then, how soon? 2 weeks. I'll overnight you something, she said, and I could hear her moving through the house, opening drawers. Your grandmother's pearls. She wore them when she left your grandfather. Did I ever tell you that story? 1952, she caught him with his secretary. Took those pearls, her children, and never looked back. Friday morning, the package arrived. Inside, the pearls glimmered like drops of moonlight nestled in velvet. A note in my mother's careful cursive read. Wear these in Singapore. New beginnings deserve old blessings. P.S. Your father left something else. Check beneath the lining. Under the velvet was a slim envelope containing a cashier's check for $50,000 and another note. Your dad's secret account. He always said it was for when you finally decided to fly. Consider this his permission to soar. 8 years gone, and he was still protecting me. The tears came then, silent, steady. I sat in that wretched guest room holding the pearls worn by generations of women who refused to shrink themselves for anyone's comfort. Wiping my cheeks, I placed them back into their box and stared at the check, my father reaching across time to fund my escape. I slipped both into my laptop bag, the only private space left to me in that house. When I stepped into the hallway, Sabrina was orchestrating a catering crew through my kitchen. Oh, Clara. Perfect timing, she chirped, not even glancing up as she directed delivery men toward the dining room. We're having a small dinner tonight, nothing fancy. Just some of Ethan's colleagues from the firm. You don't mind, do you? The question was meaningless. Everything had already been decided. She had arranged my grandmother's sterling silver on the table, the wedding set she'd once complimented. My Waterford crystal glasses sparkled in the evening light, all of it staged to perfection. Who's coming? I asked, though the answer no longer mattered. The Wheelers, that new partner Ethan's trying to impress, Mitchell something. Maybe 12 people total. Then she finally looked at me, one hand circling her stomach. You'll join us, won't you? Though perhaps you could eat in the kitchen. We're a bit tight on space. By 7 o'clock, my penthouse had become Sabrina's theater. She glided among guests in a flowing dress that accentuated her pregnancy, accepting praise for her home with effortless charm. Ethan's colleagues and their wives gathered in the living room, admiring the view I had paid for, the furniture I had chosen, the art I had collected. Sabrina, this space is absolutely stunning, gushed Mrs. Wheeler, the senior partner's wife whose approval could determine careers. You have such exquisite taste. Thank you so much, Sabrina purred, one hand resting on my Danish sideboard. We've worked so hard to make it perfect for the baby. I stood in the corner, holding a glass of wine I couldn't drink, watching my own life paraded as theirs. Ethan moved confidently among his guests, the picture of success in a home he hadn't earned, casting glances toward me, half warning, half smugness. Then a voice beside me, "Excuse me," Mrs. Wheeler said gently, confusion softening her tone. "I'm sorry, but who are you? Are you with the catering team?" The room didn't fall silent, but I felt the air shift, the subtle turn of heads, the quiet curiosity. Ethan started walking toward us, his expression already arranging itself into an explanation. But I spoke first. "I'm Clara Winslow, Ethan's wife. I own this penthouse." Mrs. Wheeler's eyebrows rose toward her hairline. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I just assumed." Sabrina's smile flickered, and I added, "It's an easy mistake." My tone carried just enough edge to make Ethan stop mid-stride. "I'm staying in the guest room temporarily while Sabrina and Marco prepare for their baby." The confusion rippling through the room was almost worth the humiliation. Almost. Mrs. Wheeler's sharp eyes darted between Sabrina, Ethan, and me, measuring status and damage like a social strategist who'd spent decades in Manhattan society. "How generous of you," she said finally, though her tone suggested something else entirely. Sabrina swooped in then, all smiles and deflection. "Clara's been so accommodating. She works such long hours anyway, the guest room is really more practical for her schedule." The evening unraveled from there. I retreated to the kitchen under the pretense of checking on the caterers, but really just to escape the suffocating performance of my own erasure. That's where Marco found me an hour later, his cheeks flushed with wine and his filter long gone. "You know, you're really lucky," he slurred, leaning against my refrigerator as if he belonged there. "Sabrina wanted you gone completely day one, out on the street. But Ethan, smart guy, he said no, we need her rent money for a few more weeks, just until the next bonus cycle." He made a little gesture, a tossing motion. "Then she can go." The words didn't shock me, they simply confirmed what I'd already known. I wasn't just being replaced, I was being drained first, used for every last dollar before disposal. "Interesting," I said quietly, filing his confession away with the rest of my evidence. Marco grabbed a half-empty bottle of the $200 Bordeaux I'd been saving and poured himself another glass. "Sabrina's got it all figured out. Always has. Even before." He stopped himself abruptly, realizing he'd said too much. "Before what?" I prompted, but he was already retreating toward the party, muttering something about finding his wife. The rest of the night passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful avoidance. I watched Sabrina command the room, watched Ethan accept praise for his beautiful home, and watched my life being rewritten while I stood in the footnotes. At exactly 10:30, Sabrina pressed a hand to her stomach and let out a theatrical gasp. "Oh no, Ethan, something's wrong." It was a flawless performance. Ethan rushed to her side, the guests parting instantly as they exited in a frenzy of concern. "Clara will handle cleanup," Ethan called over his shoulder. "Won't you, darling?" The door closed behind their manufactured crisis, leaving me with Marco, a dozen confused guests, and the wreckage of a dinner party I had never wanted. Mrs. Wheeler lingered, her eyes clear and unforgiving. "Interesting evening," she said slowly. Then she stepped closer. "I knew your father before he passed. He would not have tolerated this." She left before I could speak, but her words stayed as I spent the next 2 hours cleaning up after other people's chaos. Marco snored on my sofa, occasionally asking for water or a snack. I knew the cramps that had sent Sabrina to the hospital would miraculously vanish once Ethan confirmed I'd handled everything. At 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Tessa had sent screenshots that turned my blood to ice. Sabrina's private Instagram, the one she believed secure, told the real story. Posts from months earlier showed my penthouse. Cannot wait to raise our baby here, dated 2 weeks before she even announced her pregnancy to Ethan. Planning the nursery in our new home 6 weeks ago. So grateful everything is falling into place, 3 months back. This wasn't opportunism. It was premeditation, a scheme executed with the precision of a heist. I had been the target from the start. I stared at Tessa's messages until my eyes burned, the timestamp reading 2:47 a.m. Marco was sprawled on my sofa, his empty wine glass tipped over on my coffee table, leaving a ring I didn't bother to wipe away. It was a small rebellion. I walked to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent to quiet disasters. That was when I made my final decision. Saturday would be my Independence Day. I barely slept, running through logistics with the same methodical focus I used for multi-million-dollar mergers. At 5 o'clock, I rose, showered in the guest bathroom with its weak water pressure, and dressed carefully, black slacks, a white silk blouse, and around my neck my grandmother's pearls. By 7:45, I was in the lobby, watching through the glass as 3 large trucks turned onto the street. Harold, the doorman who'd watched 7 years of my marriage, gave me a knowing nod. Big day, Mrs. Winslow. The biggest, Harold, and it's Miss Winslow now. At exactly 8 o'clock, 20 movers flooded through the entrance with the coordination of a military unit. Nathaniel, the lead coordinator, approached with his clipboard, flanked by professionals who knew their roles well. I had given them floor plans, photographs, and a color-coded inventory, green for take, red for leave. There weren't many reds. Ethan's gaming chair, the Murphy bed, and the lamp Sabrina had brought from her old apartment. We'll start with the large furniture, Nathaniel said crisply. Then work down to boxes. 3, maybe 4 hours. Perfect. I handed him an envelope. Coffee and pastries are in the truck outside for your team. They'll need the energy, I said as the elevator began its steady rhythm, up empty, down full. My Italian sectional went first, the one I had ordered after closing the Morrison account. Then the dining table where, just hours earlier, Sabrina had played hostess to Ethan's colleagues. Each item that left the penthouse felt like an incision, removing something diseased and long overdue. The sound finally broke through the Saturday morning quiet. Marco appeared first, shuffling out in silk pajamas that probably cost more than most people's rent, his hair wild and eyes bleary. What's happening? Why are there people here? I'm moving out, I said evenly, checking items off my list as 2 movers carried my bookshelf past him. Sabrina suggested I should leave by the weekend. I'm simply taking her advice. His face cycled through confusion, realization, and disbelief. Then he saw them lifting the 85-inch OLED television I'd bought myself for Christmas, and something finally registered. Wait. You can't take that. We use that. You use things I paid for, I corrected. There's a difference between using and owning. Sabrina's entrance was more dramatic. She burst from my bedroom, their bedroom now, her silk robe hanging open over her stomach, outrage distorting her face. Stop. Stop right now. You can't do this. Nathaniel and his team didn't even glance up. I'd briefed them well about potential theatrics. You can't take everything. Sabrina's voice climbed higher, sharp enough to make several movers pause. This is insane. This is theft. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd prepared days ago. Would you like to see the receipts? The sofa, purchased March 2021, business account. The dining table, December 2020, annual bonus. The kitchen appliances? Same source. I smiled sweetly. All mine. Every single piece. But we live here, she cried, watching helplessly as movers wrapped my artwork in blankets. You live in a space I no longer pay for, I said calmly. How you choose to furnish it now is entirely your concern. Ethan appeared last, disheveled and half-dressed, his hair sticking up in uneven tufts, yesterday's shirt buttoned wrong. His expression moved from confusion to comprehension to outright panic. Clara, we need to talk about this. We needed to talk before you ambush me with your sister's takeover, I said. That window's closed. Let's be reasonable, he tried. It was his favorite phrase, code for do what I want. This is extreme. I watched as movers carried our bed frame past him, the California king where he'd made promises he never intended to keep. Extreme, I repeated quietly. Extreme was suggesting I move to the guest room. This is just practical. Where are we supposed to sleep? He asked, genuine bewilderment in his tone, as if furniture simply materialized on command. That sounds like a you problem, Ethan. Maybe Marco's creative consulting can manifest something. Sabrina's eyes filled with tears. Her hand pressed dramatically against her belly, her most reliable performance gesture. How can you do this to a pregnant woman? To your family? Family? I repeated, the words sour in my mouth. Family doesn't exile each other to storage rooms. Family doesn't plan secret coups for 7 months. Family doesn't treat each other like tenants in their own home. Nathaniel approached quietly, clipboard in hand. Miss Winslow, we're almost finished, just the kitchen items and your office furniture. Sabrina turned to Ethan, gripping his arm. Do something. Call someone. This can't be legal. Oh, it's completely legal, I said, pulling out the documentation Victoria had prepared. Every item being removed was purchased by me with my money from my accounts. The receipts are all here. Would you like copies for your records? The movers continued methodically. My Italian coffee maker, Sabrina's prized morning ritual, vanished into a box. The smart home system disconnected, leaving them with basic switches and dead outlets. Even the expensive water filter I'd installed was removed. When the last boxes were loaded, I stood in the hollow space that had once been my home. It looked enormous now, stripped of everything I'd built. Sabrina was crying openly. Marco stood filming, perhaps imagining an Instagram story captioned unfair eviction. Ethan stood motionless, stunned. There's one more thing, I said, pulling the final document from my bag, the lease. Ethan's face drained of color the moment he saw the management company's letterhead. This lease is in my name alone, I reminded him. You insisted on it, remember? To protect your assets from my business liability. I let that hang in the air. Building management has already been notified. As of Monday, you're trespassing. You have 48 hours. The words echoed off the bare walls like a verdict. Ethan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Sabrina's tears kept flowing, though the act had lost its effect. Marco still held his phone, frozen mid-recording. 48 hours? Sabrina whispered. But where will we go? That's no longer my concern. I turned to Nathaniel, who waited patiently with the final inventory sheet. You wanted me gone by the weekend, I said to them. Consider your wish granted. The elevator ride down felt like ascension, leaving hell for daylight. Harold, the doorman, held the door open as I stepped out for the last time as Mrs. Winslow. Well done, ma'am, he murmured. My car was already packed, essentials, documents, a small suitcase, and my grandmother's pearls warm against my skin. The drive to JFK Airport took exactly 53 minutes. My phone vibrated nonstop, screen lighting up with name after name. Ethan, Sabrina, Marco, and then, unexpectedly, Margaret Winslow. Ethan's mother, the same woman who'd spent 7 years treating me like an interloper at family dinners, who'd once asked when he would find someone more suitable, was suddenly desperate to reach the unsuitable daughter-in-law she'd never wanted. I waited until I was seated in the first-class lounge, a glass of champagne in hand, before listening to the voicemails. They played like a symphony of desperation, each one more frantic than the last. Ethan's first message tried for authority. Clara, this is ridiculous. Call me back immediately so we can sort this out like adults. By the 5th message, his composure had cracked into pleading. Please, we need to talk. You can't just leave us with nothing. This is your home too. Sabrina's messages were shrill and panicked. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. Think about the baby. How can you be so heartless? Marco had managed only one confused voicemail. Hey, Clara, could you at least tell us how the coffee maker works? We can't figure it out. But Margaret's message was the most revealing. Clara, dear, There seems to be some misunderstanding. Ethan needs you to be reasonable. The family reputation is at stake. Call me back immediately. The family reputation. Not concern for me, not acknowledgement of betrayal, only panic over appearances at the country club. 3 hours into my flight to Singapore, somewhere high above the Pacific, my phone connected to the plane's Wi-Fi. The messages resumed, even more desperate. But it was Monday morning's call from Sabrina that gave me the truest sense of closure. I was standing in my new apartment, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Marina Bay, when her number appeared on my screen. This time, I answered. Ethan said you have a trust fund, she sobbed immediately. He said there's inheritance money you've been hiding. Where is it, Clara? We need it. I set down my coffee, brewed with a simple machine that didn't require an engineering degree, and let her words hang between continents. Sabrina, I said quietly, there is no trust fund. There never was. You're lying. Her voice climbed, shrill with desperation. Ethan said your father left money, investments, hidden accounts. My father left medical bills, I interrupted, calm and steady. And a $50,000 life insurance policy that barely covered his final expenses. Every penny you've been living on, every piece of furniture you've used, every luxury you've enjoyed came from my consulting firm, the business Ethan used to call my little hobby at dinner parties. Silence. But Ethan promised, she whispered at last. He said once you were gone, we'd have access to your money. He lied to you, Sabrina, I said softly. Or maybe he lied to himself so thoroughly that he believed it. Either way, you've been conned by your own brother. The sound that came through the line wasn't exactly crying, not exactly screaming, something raw, animal, and broken. We have nothing, she gasped. We have nowhere to go. The landlord locked us out this morning. Ethan's cards don't work. We're sitting in Marco's car with our suitcases. That sounds difficult, I said, surprised by the absence of satisfaction in my voice. No triumph, only an odd stillness, a hollow where my marriage had once existed. By Tuesday, the collapse was complete. Tessa, ever my reliable source, called with updates. Ethan had been forced to explain to his colleagues why he'd suddenly lost his prestigious address. The truth spread through the firm like wildfire, how he'd tried to take his successful wife's home and ended up homeless instead. The Wheelers, the very couple who'd attended that humiliating dinner, were particularly vocal. Mitchell, the new partner Ethan had hoped to impress, told anyone who would listen. The whole firm knows, Tessa reported gleefully. They're saying Ethan was a kept man who bit the hand that fed him. Sabrina and Marco had found temporary housing in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, a far cry from the Manhattan penthouse she'd once tried to claim. Her Instagram had gone dark. The perfectly curated image of success was gone. The nursery she'd planned in my bedroom would now be a cramped corner that probably smelled of other people's cooking and faced a brick wall. Ethan, meanwhile, had moved back to his parents' house in Connecticut. A 43-year-old man returned to his childhood room with nothing but excuses and shame. Margaret, I heard through mutual acquaintances, was mortified. Her once proud son, reduced to a cautionary tale about arrogance and greed. Wednesday evening, Singapore time, I finally called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting since I left. Tell me you're safe, she said. I'm safe, Mom. I'm in Singapore. I got the job, the apartment, everything. For a moment, there was silence, then a deep exhale that carried 70 years of worry and wisdom. Good, she said at last. And Ethan? The family? I asked, though the question was rhetorical. There, managing. 3 months have passed since that Saturday morning exodus, and Singapore has become more than an escape, it's become home. My office at Carrington International occupies a corner of the 32nd floor, its windows stretching from floor to ceiling, overlooking Marina Bay. The view still stops me mid-meeting sometimes. The space is mine, clean lines, warm wood, and a single painting by a local artist that reminds me of beginnings. My team of 30 professionals treats me with a respect I'd forgotten existed. They call me Miss Winslow not because they must, but because they mean it. When I speak, people take notes. When I suggest a strategy, it's implemented. There are no condescending smiles, no whispered jokes about ambitious women. No need to soften my confidence to protect someone else's ego. The apartment Nathaniel Carrington's company provided has exceeded every expectation. 23rd floor, 2 bedrooms, though I live alone. A kitchen where I cook whatever I want without judgment, and a living room arranged exactly as I like. No compromises, no shared decisions. Each morning, I wake to sunlight glittering on the bay, make coffee in silence, and feel something I hadn't in years. Contentment. My phone dinged with a new email notification. The sender's name made me pause. Ethan Winslow. Subject line: please read, important. I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity won. 6 pages filled my screen, a rambling manifesto of regret, self-pity, and thinly veiled manipulation. I've been in therapy, he wrote, as if 2 months of counseling could erase 7 years of erosion. I understand now how I failed you, how I let family dynamics cloud my judgment. We had something special, Clara. We could have that again. The delusion was breathtaking. He reminisced about our early days, carefully omitting the constant competition, the quiet sabotage, the subtle ways he made sure my light never outshone his. He mentioned marriage counseling, communication workshops, even suggested I keep my Singapore job and commute. 15-hour flights to salvage a marriage that had died long before Sabrina's arrival. I know you're angry, one paragraph read. But anger fades. Love remains. Love. From the man who'd chosen his sister over his wife. Who'd conspired to steal my home and drain my accounts. Now he spoke of love like he'd ever known it. I forwarded the entire email to Victoria, my attorney, with one line. Please add to harassment documentation. No response needed. The rest reached me through professional circles and Tessa's study updates. Sabrina had given birth to a healthy baby girl 2 weeks earlier. The Instagram post was subdued, a single photo in what looked like a small apartment. No designer nursery, no editorial-style announcement. The caption read simply, "Welcome to the world, Amelia." Tessa noted the comment section was nearly empty. The society crowd had already moved on to newer scandals. Marco's LinkedIn listed him as freelance creative consultant, a polished phrase meaning unemployed. His last update about exciting new ventures had 3 likes, all from family. The smoothie video that once made him locally famous was buried deep, impossible for newcomers to find. But Ethan's downfall was the most spectacular. Wheeler and Associates had restructured, which in corporate language meant his scandal embarrassed them and he needed to go. His profile now read seeking new opportunities. But architecture relies on reputation, and who would hire the man who'd tried to architect his own wife out of her home? Tessa called one evening while I was cooking dinner. Simple pasta, heavy on garlic, exactly how I liked it. You'll never guess who I saw at Whole Foods, she began. Margaret Winslow. Buying generic brands. She looks like she's aged 10 years. I smiled faintly. Ethan's still living with his parents, Tessa continued. Can you imagine? The man who spent years bragging about success now depending on mom and dad to keep the lights on. Oh, and get this. Margaret Wheeler says Sabrina applied for a full-time retail job at Nordstrom. The same Sabrina who acted like work was beneath her, I said quietly, stirring the sauce. Tessa laughed. Folding blouses for women who used to attend her parties. I didn't laugh back. What I felt wasn't satisfaction, not exactly, and not pity either. Something more complex, like watching a building you once lived in being demolished. Necessary. Inevitable. But carrying the echo of what it once was. That night, unable to sleep, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Singapore skyline. The city pulsed with light, alive and indifferent to the ruins I'd left behind. Here, no one knew me as Mrs. Winslow. My success wasn't a threat, my ambition wasn't a flaw. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Your grandmother would be proud. You didn't just leave a bad situation. You built something better. She was right. They had wanted me gone, erased like an inconvenient line from their picture. But in removing me, they had ripped away the foundation holding everything up. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd simply stopped propping them up. The tears that came then weren't for Ethan, or the marriage, or the wasted years spent trying to make myself smaller. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of understanding that walking away isn't surrender. It's victory. If this story of calculated revenge resonated with you, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Clara revealed the lease was in her name. That moment their faces froze, realizing the trust fund never existed. What was your favorite moment of justice? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget, subscribe and tap the notification bell for more true stories of betrayal, power, and redemption.